There's something I need to share with you today, something that took me nearly 8 long years, 2 painful accidents, and one frightening night lying helpless on a freezing bathroom floor before I finally understood it clearly. My name is Flora Jean. I am 83 years old, and there was a time when I came dangerously close to losing my life while sitting inside the very home I believed would always keep me safe. Not because I was incapable, not because I was seriously ill, but because no one had ever truly explained what it means to grow older and live alone after the age of 60. When my husband Richard passed away on a quiet Tuesday morning, I honestly believed I was prepared for whatever came next. I had our home. I had enough savings to live comfortably. I had my routines, my independence, and decades of experience managing a household. I was 75 years old at the time, and until that moment, I had never spent my life alone. Not one single night. I moved from my parents' home into a life with Richard, and for 46 years there was always another person nearby. Someone breathing in the next room. Someone asking how my day was. Someone noticing if I looked tired or worried or unwell. And then one morning, there was silence. The kind of silence that changes the shape of a house. What happened after that changed me completely. The lessons I learned came through fear, exhaustion, mistakes, and moments that could have ended very differently. And today I want to share those lessons with you because if even one person listening avoids the pain I experienced, then every difficult moment taught me something worthwhile. About 3 months after Richard died, at around 6 in the morning, I stepped out of the shower and slipped. My foot lost balance on the wet tile, and I hit my head hard against the sink before crashing onto the floor. My phone was sitting in the bedroom about 20 feet away, but in that moment it felt impossibly far. I was dizzy, soaked, shaking, and completely alone. I stayed there for 6 hours, 6 hours staring at the ceiling, unable to stand properly, wondering if anyone would notice something was wrong. Finally, around 3 in the afternoon, my neighbor Sarah realized my newspaper was still sitting untouched on the porch. Her husband had kept a spare key for emergencies, and thankfully she decided to check on me. When the paramedics arrived, one of them looked directly at me and quietly said, "A few more hours and this could have ended very differently." That sentence stayed with me, because in that moment I understood something painful but important. I was not truly living alone. I was merely surviving alone, and those are not the same thing. So let me tell you what changed after that day. Let me tell you about the habits, routines, and systems I slowly built that allowed me to continue living safely in my own home while still protecting my independence. The very first thing I created was something I now call my silent morning check-in. It wasn't expensive. It didn't require technology, monthly subscriptions, or complicated devices. Every morning before 9 o'clock, I move a flower pot from the left side of my porch to the right side. Sarah can see it clearly from her kitchen window while she drinks her morning coffee. If that flower pot hasn't moved by 10, she comes to check on me. If I don't answer the door, she uses the key and comes inside. That tiny habit takes less than 5 seconds, but it provides something priceless. Reassurance that someone would know quickly if I needed help. If you live alone and nobody would notice within a few hours if something happened to you, that is the first thing you need to change. Not someday. Today. The second lesson I learned was much harder for my pride to accept. I realized my memory could no longer carry every responsibility by itself. When Richard was alive, we naturally acted as backups for each other. He reminded me whether I had already taken my medication. I reminded him about appointments, bills, and groceries. Together, we filled in each other's gaps without even noticing. But suddenly there was only me, and within weeks I found myself forgetting simple things. I took medications twice because I couldn't remember if I had already taken them earlier. I paid bills more than once. Sometimes I couldn't remember whether I had eaten lunch at all. At first, I frightened myself into believing something terrible was happening to my mind. But eventually, I realized it wasn't necessarily memory loss. It was the mental exhaustion of one person trying to carry an entire life without support. So I bought a plain notebook. Every morning I write the date, medications taken, meals eaten, tasks completed, appointments scheduled, and reminders for later. Some people might see that and assume it means decline. I see it differently now. I see it as wisdom. Your mind deserves support, just like every other important part of your life. And if conversations like this matter to you, if honest discussions about aging, independence, and living safely are important to you, I hope you'll stay connected with Wisdom of Age. Because what we talk about here is not empty motivation or unrealistic advice. These are lessons learned through real experiences, difficult moments, and years of trial and error. So stay with us because some of what comes next may genuinely help someone you love. Now, the third lesson was emotional more than physical, and it nearly stole my joy completely before I recognized what was happening. About 6 months after Richard died, my sister Jean came to visit. We were sitting at the kitchen table when she suddenly asked me a question I couldn't answer. "Margaret, when was the last time you bought something just because it made you happy?" I sat there in silence, and without realizing it, I had stopped allowing myself pleasure. Every dollar became reserved for emergencies, repairs, medications, or future problems. I had quietly shifted from living my life to simply maintaining it. Jean told me to promise her something. She said, "Set aside a little money every month that is only for joy. Not survival, joy." The first month, I bought expensive coffee beans from the little market downtown, the kind I used to love years ago but stopped buying because it seemed unnecessary. The next morning, I sat on the porch holding that warm cup, breathing in the smell, and unexpectedly started crying. Not because of the coffee, because I had forgotten what it felt like to still deserve beautiful things. Please remember this. You are not simply a list of medications, appointments, and responsibilities. You are still a human being with preferences, comforts, memories, and joy. Do not abandon that part of yourself. The fourth thing I created may have been one of the smartest decisions I ever made. I built what I call my emergency folder. It's a bright yellow folder taped inside my pantry door where anyone can easily find it. Inside are my medications, allergies, doctor information, emergency contacts, medical history, and written instructions explaining my wishes in case I cannot communicate clearly. When I experienced my second fall, paramedics found that folder almost immediately. They knew exactly what medications I was taking and what treatments to avoid. One of them told me that having information prepared ahead of time makes emergency situations far safer and much less confusing. When you live alone, preparation becomes your voice during moments when you may not be able to speak for yourself. The fifth lesson took me the longest to accept because emotionally it felt like giving up. It was wearing a medical alert button on my wrist. For almost a year, I resisted it. I told myself those devices were only for people who had stopped believing in their own strength. I convinced myself I didn't need one. Then came the second fall. I spent hours sitting on the floor, unable to reach the phone comfortably, hoping someone would eventually notice something was wrong. The very next morning, I ordered the alert device, and I have worn it every day since. And here's what I understand now. Wearing protection is not surrender. It is preparation. It is choosing to remain in control instead of waiting helplessly for luck. The sixth thing I changed completely transformed my daily comfort. I redesigned my kitchen to match the body I have now instead of the body I had decades ago. Heavy cookware moved out of low cabinets. Everyday dishes were placed where I could reach them easily without stretching. I replaced difficult tools with simpler electric versions that reduced strain on my hands. I even added a chair near the counter so I could sit while preparing meals instead of standing until my back hurt. And perhaps most importantly, I stopped forcing myself to use things that made daily life harder simply because they were cheaper. I bought better kitchen knives, better coffee, better olive oil. If I was going to prepare meals for myself every single day at 83 years old, I decided I deserved to enjoy the experience. Your home should support your current life, not constantly remind you of what your body used to do effortlessly years ago. The seventh lesson required deep honesty with myself. When you live alone, nobody is observing you closely enough to say, "You seem different today," or "You should probably see a doctor." You must become that person for yourself. I ignored dizziness for months because I blamed it on grief. I ignored pain near my side because I assumed it would disappear. I ignored chest tightness because I convinced myself it was only stress. Eventually, doctors discovered the dizziness came from a dangerous medication interaction. The side pain was a kidney stone. The chest tightness was severe anxiety that required real treatment and attention. None of those symptoms were meaningless. And pretending everything is fine while your body is trying to warn you is not bravery. It is risk. The eighth thing that helped me sounds almost too simple to matter, but it became one of the strongest anchors in my life. Every morning at 7 o'clock, I sit on my porch with coffee for exactly 10 minutes. Same chair, same mug, same quiet routine. That small ritual gives structure to my day. When grief feels heavy, when loneliness tries to settle into the house, when the future feels uncertain, those 10 minutes remind me that I am still here, still present, still participating in my own life. Human beings need rituals. We need moments that create stability and familiarity. Find one simple daily habit that grounds you emotionally and protect it carefully. The ninth lesson surprised me more than any other. I realized I needed purpose, but I also needed to create it in my own way instead of waiting for other people to provide it for me. I tried community groups and senior activities, but often they made me feel more disconnected instead of less lonely. So eventually I created my own private rituals of meaning. I began writing letters, letters to Richard, letters to my younger self, letters to my children and grandchildren. Most of them are never sent anywhere, but writing them reminds me that my story is still continuing. Some people garden, some paint, some volunteer, some study family history or learn new recipes. The activity itself is not the important part. The important part is staying emotionally connected to something larger than simply making it through another day. Meaning is rarely handed to us automatically. We create it intentionally. And finally, the 10th lesson may be the most important one of all. I learned to ask for help before a situation becomes a crisis. That lesson alone probably preserved my independence more than anything else. For a long time, my water heater made strange noises. I ignored them. Then I tried to manage around the problem. Eventually, the heater failed completely, leaving me without hot water for days and costing far more money than an early repair would have. That experience taught me something valuable. Waiting until a situation becomes desperate removes your choices. When you ask for help early, you still remain in control. Now I ask Sarah's husband to replace light bulbs before I even think about climbing a chair. I call the doctor when something feels slightly unusual instead of waiting until symptoms become severe. I ask the neighbor's son to help carry heavy groceries or move furniture. None of these things damaged my dignity. In fact, they protected it. because every small act of support helped me continue living safely inside this home that I love. Today, I am still here, still waking up in my own bedroom every morning at 83 years old, not because I am extraordinary, not because I am fearless, and certainly not because life has been perfect. I am here because I built systems that support me during weak moments, protect me during emergencies, and allow me to remain independent without pretending I can do everything alone forever. Every morning when I move that flower pot, open my notebook, and pour my coffee, I feel something deeply. Gratitude, real gratitude. For Sarah watching from her kitchen window, for the bright red blanket on my couch that I bought simply because the color made me smile, for the emergency button on my wrist that I hope I never need to press, for every difficult lesson that taught me how to keep going safely and wisely. If you are living alone, or if someone you care about is, I hope you begin with even one thing from today's conversation. Just one. Because the truth is not that one bad moment will destroy everything. The truth is that one thoughtful decision today can completely change what happens tomorrow. So start now. Stay with us here at Wisdom of Age, and subscribe if you haven't already, because these conversations matter. We are going to keep talking honestly about aging, independence, fear, resilience, safety, and the quiet realities people rarely discuss openly. And as for me, I will continue learning, continue adjusting, continue appreciating every morning I wake up in this home surrounded by the life Richard and I built together. Please take care of yourself. You deserve care, comfort, safety, and joy at every stage of life.